Hey bitches, my name is Elle with Roselle's Creations and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be learning how to create this 20-ounce straight AF handled tumbler. 3 color ombre, couple of UVDTF wraps that I merged together. And over the past couple months, I've got a lot of questions on how I epoxy my handled tumblers and I don't get the bunching. And it's very thin and very smooth. So we are going to go over that today in this video. Everything that I use today can be found down below in the description box with a link and a discount code. And I just want to say thank you for all the subscribes, the likes, the shares. My goal was to hit 1K by March. We're in March. We're almost there, not stopping. But y'all ready? Let's get into it. All right, bitches. Let's get started. So, we are about to do a 3 color ombre on a 20-ounce straight AF tumbler from Mother Tumbler. These are the only handled tumblers I use. We are going to be using Adhesive Apothecary's thick glitter glue, their Cauldron color as the base, and their Cauldron color is a 3-in-1 paint, primer, and adhesive. It dries pretty quickly, so that is why I use it for my base coat. You don't have to use it to apply glitter. You can use them in place of spray paint. I couldn't tell y'all the last time I've used spray paint. We are going to go in with PDB Creative Studio's Heart Happy, Magnolia Blossom, and Moonlight. And we are going to blend those together into an ombre that blew my mind. So let's get into it. So we are going in with the Cauldron color. I shook it up real good to get the pigment, the adhesive, everything mixed together. And I do a pretty generous coat. Like I said, it dries super fast in my environment. So I want to make sure that it is thick and I have enough working time to at least lay out my first coat of the ombre. Just look at that pigment. It covers the stainless steel like flawlessly. What I have started to do though is I paint the entire tumbler and I leave my handle for last. Because by the time I get to my handle, it's already dry. So I do both coats of my glitter, then I go back to my handle. Just trust me, bitches. I didn't know what I wanted to do to it yet either. So we're going to get this laid down. One thing with the Cauldron colors is I don't worry about streaking. As you can see, I'm having to go all over the place to get under that handle. You will not notice that. Once you start glittering, you're not going to see the streaks like you usually see with your adhesives. You're not going to see them. So let's get that ass covered up and let's get to the ombre process. So, I am going to speed it up periodically in spot, just so y'all don't have to sit there and watch me keep going. And I don't use music because I always get copyrighted. So, little bit of silence here and there. So, when I ombre, I use darkest color first, then I go to my lightest. So, I am going in with PDB's Moonlight, and I am going to cover the ass of that tumbler, bring it up about 1 inch, go all the way around. And then once I get my glitter laid about 1 inch, I'm going to tilt. And we are going to let that glitter cascade down. Usually I will bring it all the way to the middle of the tumbler, but since we are using 3 colors, I'm going to stop right below that handle. My first coat is always my guide. I don't want it perfect. When I go in with my second coat, that's all she wrote. That's whenever we perfect that ombre. On this first coat, I actually went a little bit too high, but I was able to fix that on the second coat. Now we are going in with Magnolia Blossom. That is our second to lightest. And I'm going to go up about 1/4 inch and start. Do the same thing, get about my 1/2 inch to 1 inch band all the way around the tumbler. And I am going to tilt it up and down, back and forth, to get it to blend into that moonlight. We're going down. Then I'm going to tilt it down to get it to blend down to the top of that tumbler. I hope this shit makes sense. I hope it makes sense. I'm used to my stuff being in time lapse. so I'm trying to go a little bit slower talking. But you can see, tilting it down, and I'm trying to control so it doesn't go all the way to the rim because we still have a whole nother color to do. This is where I kind of overlooked where to start and to finish on the first coat. Once we get that second color laid down, I'm just going to go fill it in, make sure everything's okay. We're going to go in with our lightest color, and I am using Heart Happy. I just love this opalescent white. It is freaking gorgeous. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go around the top rim, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch. Then we're going to tilt this tumbler down and let that cascade into the Magnolia Blossom, that middle color. This is why I loaded the coat on, to make sure that I would have a little bit more working time. Once we get this Heart Happy laid, I'm just going over, make sure we have no bare spot. Then I decided, once I got done laying my first coat, which I could have just left it like this. It's freaking gorgeous. I ran to my glitter wall and I got PDB's Hydra, which is a fine that matches Moonlight perfectly. And I use that just to go over my bottom color, that Moonlight, to fill in any gaps that were there. Now that I am satisfied with my first coat, I love this tumbler. We're going to go in with my heat gun and we are going to start speeding up the drying process. I use my heat gun on high heat and I just go around the tumbler, turning it 1, 2, 3, 4, just a few rotations, just until my first coat is dry enough so I can dry brush it and go into my second coat. I don't have patience to sit there and let it dry, so this speeds up the process. All right, bitches, you're ready? I go directly in after drying it to dry brushing the hell out of it. The Cauldron color, you can just see the quality because my glitter is still there. It did not all fall off. So now we're going in with the thick glitter glue. And I do a thick ass coat. It doesn't matter how thick or thin you do it, but I like having time to perfect my blends and my ombre. So that may look like a lot to some, but it dries perfectly. And boy, the coverage, it's just amazing. I have no other word. It is now my favorite adhesive. So once I get my thick glitter glue all over, nice and thick, we are going to go in and we're going to start this 3 color ombre. Just like with the Cauldron color, I do not worry about streaks or any of that because it dries so evenly. Now, what you see me doing, using my fingernail, going around my top rim, I see a lot of people that do not expose any stainless steel on their tumblers, and you have got to have a seal. You have to have something for that epoxy to hold on to. So I use my fingernail and I expose that stainless steel rim. I used to use my X-Acto knife. I used to use my Dremel. Now I use my fingernail. And it works every single time. So we're going to go in with that darkest color. That is Moonlight. It's a multi-size mix. We're going to cover that ass. And then we're going to bring it up and go about 1/4 to 1/2 inch up all the way around. And then we're going to tilt our tumbler. And we're going to let that glitter cascade down. Now, you can still see your ombre from your first coat under that adhesive. I messed up a little bit where I, laid out my colors. So here I am controlling it a little bit more and trying not to bring it too thick all the way to the handle like I did before. Once we get that color laid, we are going to go in with the second color, Magnolia Blossom. I am going to eyeball it and I am going to bring it right on top of where that Moonlight started cascading. I'm going to start right there, go around about 1/4 inch, and then we're going to drop and blend it into that Moonlight. And then we're going to flip it up and cascade it down to the top rim just enough so we can get that Heart Happy, that white, and just blend it all together. Now let's grab Heart Happy. We're going to go around that top rim. Once we get a nice thick coat, we're going to drop it down and we're going to start blending it into Magnolia Blossom. And then from there, I go around just to remove the glitter, if there's any around that top rim. And I go back and forth with all of my colors just to try to blend them out. Back and forth, just depending. Just grabbing each and every one. I even used Hydra again to go over that Moonlight to fill in any spots it was missing because this is a fine. So I just wanted to fill any gaps, anything that was showing. And I did the same thing that I did with the other three colors. Tilted it, filled in any missing or exposed spots. All right, let's get that handle. So in the beginning, I didn't know if I was going to ombre the handle or do a solid color, but I decided to use Magnolia Blossom. That's the middle color of the ombre. I am going in with the Cauldron color. The color is Ghosted. This is what we used for our base coat. And I'm just making sure I get a nice thick coat over that stainless steel so we don't see any of that stainless steel peeking through when we apply the glitter. You do not want that thick of a coat on the handle because when you go to epoxy, you are going to have hail. And I try my hardest to use a fine glitter. And if I use a multi-size, I try not to use one that has a lot of chunk because you don't want thick epoxy layers on your handle. I'm going to show y'all how to epoxy the handles at the end. But I'm going to speed this up while we get this glitter laid. All right, y'all. Now that the handle is finished, I am going to let this dry. I am not going to speed up the drying process for my second coat. I let it dry on its own. Depending on your environment and how thick of a coat you use, it determines the drying time. Usually overnight, I let it dry. Once it sat for a little while, I saw a couple spots on the handle that were missing glitter. So I am just going in and touching up those spots. And then I am going to re-glitter over those spots. Just wanted to make sure the entire handle was covered before going into coats of epoxy. Now that my glitter is completely dry, I am going in with Adhesive Apothecary's binding potion. This is a sealer. And I do a generous coat of this sealer. All other sealers I used before, I couldn't use that thick of a coat because it would leave cloudiness. My glitter would still move. So with this, none of that happened. You can even use your finger. You don't even have to use a brush. So let me show you how I seal my ombres. I even use binding potion to seal my single colors. So you will see me put the binding potion on each individual color and go around. Then you will see me tap my blends. That's where the colors meet. I'm telling you, doesn't matter how thick of a coat. It's going to dry clear and you will not have cloudiness. You just have to let it dry completely. You see me going back and forth between a brush and my finger. I'm just making sure I get this completely sealed because it helps with the epoxy process. I use less epoxy when I seal with this binding potion. This sealer has been game-changing for me. No bullshit. And you can see I am being heavy-handed with this sealer. And I'm going to show y'all how clear it dries coming up right here. This is it. After I sealed it, you can see it looks real creamy. Like, I even missed a little spot. See, I caught it. But once this dries, I'm just saying, I get shook every single time. Here it is in better lighting. You can see the sealer. But just wait. When it dries, it does not dull the sparkle. It does not dim the shine. And you're going to see that right here. This is it. 24 hours after the binding potion has dried Look at that sparkle. It looks like I didn't even seal it. It looks still like I had just freshly glittered it. And my glitter will not move. Let's get into epoxying. So I use DIY epoxy Speedy Petey. I mixed up about 30 ml to cover this tumbler, and I'm going to waste about 10 ml. Like I said before, with the binding potion, it seals so well that you can use less epoxy. Less epoxy means less micro bubbles. This is about 20 ml covering this tumbler, and I did 2 coats. I let dry, and now it's time to finish this bitch up. So if you guys don't know, I do a lot of my tumblers live, and I have to speed them up to be able to post them on these platforms. So the next couple of parts are sped up. I tried slowing them down, but I didn't want to distort the videos too bad. What you see me doing is I have 2 UVDTF wrap, very similar wrap. These daisies are from Sweary, Kim, Tumblers, and more. And I took that wrap and I cut them up, and I am randomly placing them around the bottom of the tumbler, even having them go on to the bottom, as you can see right there. The quality of these are insane. The second wrap that I'm using is from Timber Ridge Graphic, and I'm doing the same thing. I am cutting it up and using certain aspects from that UVDTF. You see me going back and forth to create this tumbler. UVDTFs are permanent. They do not need to be sealed if you do not want to. They don't even need a coat of epoxy over them. But when I put my UVDTFs on epoxy tumblers, I always epoxy over them. It's just my preference. I seal them with binding potion, and then I go into final coats. Once I get all of these elements laid down how I want them, how I like them, then I go back in with Adhesive Apothecary's binding potion, and I seal all of my UVDTF elements. Here we go, going in with the binding potion, using my finger, making sure that all of my elements are sealed, because believe it or not, some, if you do not have these elements or UVDTFs laid down smoothly, perfectly, they will pop up. I've seen it. So if you're going to do a coat of epoxy, I highly recommend sealing up your elements. Just like if you were using vinyl or clear cast, seal up your UVDTF element. And here it is. I let my binding potion dry. I usually let it dry overnight, but in my environment, it's very hot, couple hours, and then I go in with my final coat. Let's get into epoxying the handled tumbler. All right, so with handled tumbler, thin coats are the name of the game. You see me right here. I am doing above the handle. I am going in under the handle. I'm going below the handle. My turner is off. I am now going around the handle, pushing hard to make sure it is super thin. You can see right there. So many are scared to do handles, and they're my favorite. But it took me a long time to get. Once I get the epoxy laid down on the handled side, I turn on my turner, and then I apply my epoxy to the rest of the tumbler. But the epoxy builds up on the handle and on the top and on the bottom. You need good insert, or you need a counterweight when working with handled tumbler. I use tumbler grips. It is a type of claw that goes into your tumbler. You tighten it and your tumbler does not move. You need to make sure that your tumbler is level. And if it is skipping when it is spinning any type of way, you need something on the opposite side of that handle to counter the weight. Thin coats, a counterweight, or a very good fitting insert, and that is the name of the game for handled tumblers. You can even tape up a screwdriver on your turner arm on the opposite side of your handle. I have several videos on my TikTok showing that. I will list them below in the description box so you can refer to them. I mixed up about 20 ml of DIY epoxy Speedy Petey, and you see me just making sure my epoxy is level, even, all the way around. And you can see it is not thick around my handle or under my handle. If your tumbler is even, you are going to get a nice level coat every single time. Your inserts have a lot to do with it. I'm going to speed the rest of this up, and now we're going to torch it. I do not use a butane torch, I use propane. I'm going to make sure that I torch it 1 to 2 rotations. Too much heat can cause ripples and cause your epoxy to become unlevel. Once I torch it, I let it spin out until it dries, and then I go directly in with my final coat, and here it is, bitches. I really hope this gets you confident in epoxying handled tumbler and your ombre. Let's get it.